launching the application, you come to a startup menu, and in the startup menu, you are, oh, okay, you could get into users and things. Okay, so I clicked up here on the left. You have a basic administration for this. So the whole application has a database. And the database will store all of these project managers' settings. So your directory of projects here will be preserved within the application in the database. It's my custom to name my files by a date that will list numerically and then alphabetically. You can name things however you want. But the very first thing you will do is take the basic session and duplicate it. Start by opening the basic session. Then go up to File and save project as. And I'll leave this copy, but attach your name or however you want to call it. So then when you go back to this house icon in the bottom here, that's your project directory again. And you can then open up the copy. Now you can work with this and you won't have, you preserve the basic template here. Why I made this as a session is because it will then contain master project settings. This preset up here, this has our timeline and our time rates. So it has not yet assigned a timeline rate because we don't have any media in it yet. The timeline frame rate is determined by either the import of an edit decision list, an XML, or the type of media that come in. However, I want to make this work in 25 FPS, which is what your electric system is here. So I'm going to load my preset configuration. So again, we have a database. Inside the database, we have a directory of projects. Inside the project, we have a configuration preset that has our master setting. So I'm loading the basic 25 FPS. I go back to the settings icon in the lower right, and now I check to see that the master project setting, it should have given me 25. Okay, well, we'll fix that. And then it has other aspects. It has the timeline resolution. You could have a 4K resolution in the licensed version, but this will not give you 4K in the free version. So we're going to stay in 1920 by 1080. Pixel aspect should be square. The playback rate will do 25. Image processing, floating point. This, I was going to get into talking about color theory and that sort of thing, but more importantly, for DaVinci Resolve, floating point is a large color space that gives you the maximum amount of color. So we want to work in floating point. The color space, or the color science we're going to use is DaVinci YRGB. This happens to be a color space that gives us 4 channels, luminance and RGB, and then we can work with brightness independent of color in DaVinci. This is unique to this system. Resolve uses this color space. The other applications I've used don't. They use either 422 YUV or 444. There is another option under color science called DaVinci Resolve Color Manage, DaVinci RGB Color Manage. Be careful with that. If you're using red files, it will clip some of your settings. I would stay away from that. These other ones have to do, if you're working in the industry, the ACES is a standard that's used in Hollywood, for example, when studios are working among themselves. You don't have to do with that here, but at some point in your future, you might do that. So leave color signs of RGB. Basically, you shouldn't have to change anything. So this default should get you going. Now, to start a project, you either import media or you import XMLs. For your project, you're going to go into Macintosh HD, and on your other locations, you're going to find a folder on your desktop there called Gary, and it has red files in it. In this case, it happens to be in my file here. So what you're going to look for are the folder called red files. You don't have to go through these paths. It's only one set of media you've got over there. But I'm going to retrieve it from my files. It's in my training folder, red files. I highlight the red files, and I select Add Folder and Subfolder into Media Pools, but I'm going to use Create Bins. This is now populating a directory of media here. That's a media directory. If I'm on the media button, media page here, it shows all the media that should be in that file. So these are all those red files that were donated by the Red Camera Company. Some are 6K, some are 4K, some are unusual HDRX format. So we won't get that involved with it. But now what we want to do is populate a timeline with that media. I happen to have on my timeline here color bars, but that was to show you calibration. I'm going to take that off for now. What you're going to have in your other room is now a media directory that has media in it. All your red files are there. You will go up, click on the Edit tab, click on New Timeline. New Timeline will import the media we just did. You can give it a name. I'm calling this red files. Uncheck the empty timeline. So whatever is in the media browser now, when I create this timeline, it populates the timeline with all that media. And now you have something to work with in the other room with all this media, and it has all these red files. If you were to right-click on a piece of media here and use View Clip Details, it will tell you what sort of red file you have. So in this case, this is a 6K file, and you're looking at an R3D file format. So let's pick a file and start talking about, save it. Command-S. Also, back out at Settings, check your autosave. Autosave is here. Put your autosave, in the default I made for you, it should do an autosave every 10 minutes. When you create a new project, you have to have saved your project before it will let you do an autosave. So I just did that save. Save your project. Basic session copy. The file name is up here. So that is now saved inside the project directory and inside the database of Resolve in the Applications folder on your computer. If on autosave you set it to do a backup or leave the autosave on, it will write any changes you make to your parameters every 10 minutes. You can change that to something longer if you like, or shorter, to 5. The other option is called Backup Project. That actually writes the project itself into a directory in the database. So if your machine crashed, and you could retrieve the database, your data would come. You may elect to do that at the end of the day, but more importantly, I want you to learn how to export your project to another location, either a backup drive, multiple backups. So save your data. The auto backup will help you, but as a practice, hit that Command S, the Apple Command S, on a fairly regular basis. And that is enough for you to start working in the other room. So let's talk about primary color correction and navigating the DaVinci Resolve interface. At the bottom of the page, you had these various tabs. There's a media tab that gives you the media directory. All of this media in this canvas is the media that you have imported. If you're missing something, that media may be up in your media directory, looking at these various drives. I have all of my files on something called Coates Remotes. That's the media that I brought from California. You may also have files on your hard drive or somebody else's drive. So that's the media directory. In the applications, all right, I'll stay out of there. We don't need to. We won't go there right now. Right. Edit gives you a list of your timelines. Over here is the timelines. We've made, so far, 2 timelines. Timeline 1 was something I made yesterday. It had nothing in it. The red files is the timeline. I'm sorry, that's the timeline red files contains those red files. So the new timeline that you made is listed in the timelines directory. Over here is color. This is where you do color correcting. Delivery, the bottom one on the right, this is where you're going to assign your renders. So for us to see what you have done, at the end of your project, you are going to make a QuickTime movie of your project. I'm going to continue working now, show you primary color correcting first. And before we end, I want to show you how to import. For some of you who brought your own media, we're going to show you how to bring that in and scene detect and make a cut list. And that could be the project that you work on. And in the afternoon, when we're in the other room, if you want, I'll double check to see that your project came in. So when we're all working there in summer ahead of the others, if your own project isn't coming in, come see me and we'll get you started. Okay, color grading. You see how all these clips came in, and it has this structure here of a node. This is a color correction node. It has an input, a noodle going in, and a noodle coming out. So as long as those are activated, you can make a color change and you will see it. If for some reason that's gone away, and I were to do this, I'm making a color change on these wheels, I can't see it, suspect that you have broken the thread here. So draw from the top node out. Come on. And draw that to the output box. And there's that grade. Now that grade is wrong. So how do you reset it? You right-click on the node, reset node grade, and that goes away. The Red Camera Company provided a test subject. This is a useful one to talk about because it includes a Macbeth chart. It's really great when a cinematographer gives a colorist this sort of reference because that is a record of how the light fell in the room. When I don't have a Macbeth chart, I sort of look with that color meter. I look for where there might have been a black, a gray, and a white, and I can kind of get a sense of reading the color off of reflected surfaces in the room. But that chart's there to tell me what's what. Scope's on, and I'm going to turn, I'm right-clicking in the interface here to get the show scopes. The other way to do that is workspace, video scopes. Video scopes on. And you can have all 4 of them, or you can have 1. And this is where I told you the parade, the RGB, was maybe the most important one. We're going to start with that one. So what I want to do when making a color correction is have a node up. I want to make pure black. I'm going to try to have these 3 bottom layers line up. So these remain even. If those, as much as I can tell, are on the same line, then I've got coming to a good pure black. So how I'm going to measure that? Again, we have that clicker there. If I right-click, I've activated the qualifier, and I drag the mouse in here, and I can pick RGB values. I can put my cursor over the black square on the Macbeth chart, and I can see it's reading 42, 40, 45. There's a little blue contaminant going on there. And I would be able to change black. I'm doing black first because black is, again, the most important color. It supports all the other colors in the luminance range. And if black is tainted, it tends to cast the rest of the colors into that order. So to make something color correct to begin with, we might start with this. Now, this is a red file. So red allows us to have access to data. This camera over here, this icon over here, this accesses the raw data. I might elect to use a clip setting so that I can get into changing the ISO exposure. Here's why I'm doing this. This set of lights up here, they're all clipped out. They've all exceeded the top of this scale. So I would hope to get a little more information to start with. So I'm going to turn this to log and get this a little flatter to begin with. Again, it's raw. There's raw and there's log. Raw gives us access to, in a sense, re-expose the negative. Log is just, it is a curve, a flat curve on the data. All right, so in order to get that brightness up, I'm going to change the ISO to something like, I'm going to go 500. A little better. 100. Plenty good. I've got lots of modulation here, but now I'm kind of crushing in black. But I've recovered data there, and I'm actually seeing now detail in the whites that I hadn't seen before. I'm going to split the difference there. I'm going to go to a higher ISO. Now, you probably use camera. You haven't had a red camera, or maybe you don't have a Sony RAW camera, so this is maybe beyond what you're going to be able to do. But I'm just showing you this, and you're going to have the red files to work with. You might experiment with changing the ISO. Now I'm going to go to these gamma curves, and I'm going to elect to go with a log, a red log. And the preset goes to a red dragon color there. I'm going to go to red space for color space and color science. Color science will be version 2. All right, so that, I hope, is going to give me a little more data to work with. So now I can see blacks are elevated. Whites are not too different, but we're seeing a little more density there on that black. So put that eyedropper back up on the black chip. And again, it's pretty good. It's 58.06. Now I'm going to show you the most subtle adjustment of color in the primary. Click on the circular icon there. This gives you access to the primary color corrector. Over here on the right side, you have a menu of selections. You can use primary wheels, primary bars, or log. Stay out of log. It's trouble. It's, unless you're really shaving hairs, log can get you into a lot of trouble. We're in Rec 709. We're making a product for television. Log would be great if we were going out to film. Stay out of log. Now, your choice. You can use primary wheels. And what this will do is give you control over the color by the trackballs. This leftmost trackball is lift. I could either use, if I had a DaVinci Resolve control, I could do this. I could slide the trackball, and that changes the red color. If I want to cancel what I did, I will hit the RGB reset button there. Now, it's kind of slow and cumbersome, and the values that are changing are over here. That's not as precise as I like. So I'm hitting the reset there. I'm going to use the mouse. And with the mouse, I can make a more fine adjustment than I can with this trackball. So I kind of like the mouse. I mean, I have the panels at my home office and when I have to work fast. But when I'm really, I'm trying to do this careful balance. We're putting that eyedropper on the black chip. Now I'm saying we get 61, 58, 58. I've got too much red. So I went too far here. So that was a pretty subtle adjustment I did with the mouse. I dialed back 1 point on blue. Now I'm going to measure my black again. 61, 58, 59. Well, that's not pure black yet. So I'm low in green and high in red. I want to subtract red, and I want to add green. Subtract red, add green. So I'm going to move that trackball away from red toward green. Red's up here. Green's here. I'm going to split the difference a little bit on the axis. I'm going towards cyan. We're going to go 2 steps. So now I'm -2 red, and I'm +1 on green. That's probably too far. And now I'm too far that way. So what I'm trying to make a point here is, even with the trackballs, moving that 1 point, that's -1 red there. That is as subtle as you can go with these trackballs. Let's put the eyedropper on there again. Yeah, no, I went the wrong way. So again, I'm resetting the node, or I'm clicking here to get that. What I find more subtle are primary bars. Select primary bars. So we're neutral now. I'm looking at, with my eyedropper, we need 58, 59, 61. I want one less blue. So now I go to the lift control, and I'm going to take this down 1. That's the most subtle adjustment I can do. 1. Unless I go to log. Log gets even finer. But we're going to stay out of log. All right, eyedropper on black. 60, 60, 59, 59, 58. Probably as close as we're going to get. Let's try splitting the difference one more time. Can I get, if I go one more point, any difference? Yeah, wrong way. Okay, you can undo, you can hit Command Z and that will undo that. So I'm at minus 1.5 there. All right, so that's probably as close as we're going to get. So I'm trying to make the point that very subtle differences in the controls will give you significant results. The other mode of working is called offset, which is over here. Okay, I'm going to null what I've done over here. So I'm at 0, 0, 0 on lift. Trackball measurement one more time. Eyedropper 59, 59, 60. Yeah, it's quite different. Now I just want to show you the subtle difference of changing offset 1. So it indicates it is slightly too blue. Let's try to split a difference. So offset is different location on master offset. In blue offset, I'm adjusting blue offset only. Let's hit reset here, red. So this point system here, offset, it starts at 25. This is the basic beginning of color correction in film. At the laboratory, film laboratories, all we had were these 3 controls. We could go from 0 to 50 on 3 channels, red, green, and blue. And you would adjust brightness by going higher, darkness going lower, and if something were, you had to color correct, you know, shot had, if you hadn't white balanced or had your film filters right, you would adjust RGB in the laboratory. I'm going to adjust blue offset by about, you know, half a shaving. That's a quarter of a point. Now let's put the eyedropper on the black chip. We got it. Okay, that is splitting a hair. That is, DaVinci will give you that fine a control. So you can use trackballs if you like. On the set here, this lift will change color in black, or you can slide it by bars, or you can change it by offset. And those subtle adjustments are sometimes what helps match cameras, because one camera will be off just by a hair. But to move quickly, what you would want to do in a shot like this is you've got your primary color corrector node. You can also label these too. And for extra credit, I'm going to label my node primary, if I spell it right. Because we're going to add other nodes. We're going to get into secondary color corrections and windows and curves, and I will label each of those as I go. So I'm just letting the world know that this node here is where I was making a primary adjustment. Okay, so let's adjust the exposure. Say we didn't have log, that this was our starting point, this is what we were given. I would probably want to get, to make a good rich color, black pretty low, but not crushing black. I don't want to lose black information, so I want to stay off of 0. I want to stay 1 or 2. I would like to get as much range of brightness without clipping it. I'm seeing here this kind of levels up. This is called clipping. And when this hits the bottom and starts to compress, we call that crushing black. Let's call it crushed black or compressed black. So I want to preserve data. I want to keep color and light information in both the brightness areas. But what will make this a rich, interesting color is a contrast. Contrast is the spread of the light. So you have good, dense, solid blacks, good bright whites, and in the range in the middle tones is called gamma. And by shifting gamma up and down, you can get kind of a more interesting modeling of color. Faces start to form shapes when the gamma shifts a little bit. You see the shadow information of a face tone round and stuff. So again, I begin with trying to color balance the black to get a pure black in color. And what I did with, I'm hitting the undo, so I've saved my undo. What I've done with primary here was to get a proper black balance. You see this icon, this little indicator under the node, that tells me I'm working in the primary color correction system. If you ever wonder, what node was I working with and what was that doing? That will tell you it's doing that, or again, you could label it. I'm hitting save. I'm saving my work. Now, there are other ways to save your work as sort of like work in progress. They're called memories. I'm going to save this for now so I can kind of compare things. Up here, under the color, it will list memories. You can load memories and save memories using that. These happen to be hotkeys, so I know that I can store these by hotkey. I'm hitting Command 1, and there's if I hit this display, this is displaying. I should grab that still. What should be up here is this image. Instead of Command 1, let's do Control 1. No, I'm sorry. It's Option 1. Option 1 stores the correction in memory. So these are working memories. It's kind of like a scratch pad or something off to the side to work with. The other way you can store a correction is with stills or thumbnails. And this is Option Command G. Or grab still on this keyboard here. Again, you may not have this, so learn the keystrokes, Option Command G to save your still. You can label your stills. And I'm going to just say offset correction. Now, you don't have to do that in the other room. It's just I'm just showing you techniques to manage things. So if you start going off into this correction and you get lost, you could have saved your versions. So I've kind of saved version 1 here. Version 2 now, I'm going to start bringing in density into the black. Now, I did that with this trackball because I can move quickly with the ring adjusts the brightness. The trackball adjusts the color, or as this button indicates, the ring is level. If you want to cancel what you've done, you press the level key. That's if you're using this device. If you're using the mouse, you could use the primary bars or the primary wheels. If I used wheels and I went to this slider and I slide with my mouse, again, this is much more subtle than the... it's more subtle in the ring. I can actually see, I'm looking at the numbers change underneath that slider, and I'm trying to go increments, as fine an increment as I can. Now, where am I going to set that? See how the black is touching the line and I'm compressing the black? I've lost information. I've crushed black, and in the future, my processing of that image, it's gone. So I'm going to be a little more conservative here. I'm going to raise black level to there. Now, by using primary wheels, I have used DaVinci's composite of YRGB. I brought the luminance and chrominance together. I'm going to save that as a memory. Option 2 puts it in memory B. Option Command G stored it as a memory. And I'm going to label that wheel, or composite primary. And I'm putting my eyedropper back up there, and I'm still good black. I got 22, 22, 22. Another way to go, I'm going to undo what I did with lift and hitting this control here. The only parameter I'm going to change is what I've done here. If I were to go up to my node and I hit reset node, I would lose what I had done in primary offset and also what I would have done here. So this is the only variable I want to change. So I'm clicking that. The other way to bring that level down would be to use primary bars. What this does is gives you the option of doing Y channel independent. So I could bring down the brightness by only bringing down Y, luminance. What's nice about that in color correction is it's a linear correction. It tends to give you a pure black. You're not adding color into the shadow. So to help keep your whites and blacks clean, you might want to use luminance only in those adjustments. I'm going to store that as an option 3. And now I'm going to do a split screen. Okay, here's how you play a still. So we recorded a still, and this is the wheel version. I'm hitting play still, and now I have a split screen. It's really subtle. I don't know that you're going to see it up there, but you might see it here. The basic difference is I've made the blacks the same level, but there's less color saturation in black by doing the luminance only mode. That also contributes to getting looks. Things that look more like film, sometimes it's because you've used luminance only corrections. All right, I'm going to cancel that. I think what I did with the wheel looked better, so I'm going to reapply that grade. You can reapply it by copying from the memory. So that happened to be the B memory. I could hit Command 2, and that copies the memory to the grade. Or I could double-click. No, I right-click, and I hit Apply Grade. And that could copy it. Or I could double-click the still. Okay, well, the double-click should have applied it. Okay, I'm resetting the node. There's no grade there. We have only our log correction of the red file. Now I will double-click okay, I'm sorry, that works in the license. Right-click, apply grade. Okay, so now we have blacks. We have a pure black, and we have a dense black. We have some information in the white, but I wish we had a little more. So now I'm going to use another technique in the primaries. There's a couple of ways to get the top light back down. I could just use gain, and I'll use the rings here. This is gain coming down, or dragging the wheel down. This is the gain control over here. So gain are the whites, the brights. Reset that. This sort of takes all of it down together. But you're seeing, I saw my still was stuck. I took my still off. I'll hit the reset there. Okay, so in numbers, up here in the 900s, we have data, but what I want to see is there something I can do to stretch this down to get more information in the whites, a stretch of signal. So ordinarily just bringing down the gain, it kind of drags it all together. On number 2 here, the bottom, this gives you access to these other controls. There's something called highlight control. Now, highlight control, that works rather rapidly. So just even that much, a value here of -9, that actually gave me a little more signal to work with. So now I have a little more data in the white. I haven't crushed black, but the image is all kind of dark in the middle. This is where you go to gamma. Gamma is the middle trackball and ring, or in the, let's go back to primary wheels here. You could move this up here. And that opens the brightness. Now, I can bypass the node to see what things were before. Up here, this bypasses the grade. That's our source image, and that's what the grade is doing. The other way to do that is to toggle the node. Command D turns the grade off without. So you can kind of go back and forth, and I'm looking at the scopes to see what I've got in a stretch of things. Now, the other primary controls, let's look at color temperature on white. So click, see how that icon, I last used the split screen, so now I need to go back to the qualifier. So actually the white, the eyedropper is saying white is pretty well balanced. But if I wanted to change just the color in the whites, I would use the gain. And I'm going to go to here, the primary bars, to make a very subtle adjustment. This is in the gain, is adding just a little bit of red. See how the top of the waveform is changing? So I could get red a little higher than the others. That puts a sort of warm tint to the white. So that's the styling. That's styling we talked about earlier. That's a color correction. That's a styled grade. If the director had said, I want it to look warmer, that's how we would have done that. So that is sort of using primary to stretch the signal, the video signal, to get a nice range of the signal here. There are other ways to do that. Overall to the picture, there, if we go back to the one button here, there's something called contrast. You could type in a number there, 1.2. That's one way to add contrast. I'm going to say my most recent memory, I'm putting in option 2. No, I copy that. Control 2 is copied. No, it should be Option 2. Yeah. Option 2, again, these notes are up here in making memories. So under memory, to add to a memory, to save a memory, I would have hit Option 2 to memory. To load the memory, I would have done Command 2. So I've stored that. What I want to do is to explore what contrast changes. So I preserve that. Let's show the difference between 1 and 2. I'm adding 2 points of contrast, and I'm storing that with Option 3. So now I have memory 2 and 3 up here. They're labeled as B, but your control is by numerics. This one and this one. So that's before contrast, and it's after contrast. So you can click back, you can hit apply, and can compare those memories. Or you could play one memory, apply the other memory, and then wipe. Whoop. Put the wiper on here. So now you have a split screen to wipe between those. So you can examine and see which one you like best. You can work with a filmmaker and say, do you like this better than that? What you may find is you've gone too far in one direction, and the director will ask you to split the difference. So you can go to this contrast, and then I'm going to numerically split the difference to 1.1. Now I will store that in Option 4. I'm going to turn off my still. So you can load, Command 2, load the first memory, Command 3, the second memory, Command 3, the third memory, 1, 2, or 3. That allows you to compare and discuss. Okay, so those are, we've examined primary controls. Offset, interestingly enough, the most primitive aspect of color correcting from our film laboratory days gave us the purest black. And then lift, using composite color and luminance, gave us a more interesting black. We don't have a crushed black. We have a stylized white, and I think I'll leave it at that. So that could be a first primary. The other things you can control with contrast, let's load up that most contrasty version. That's memory C. Right click, apply grade. You can adjust where the contrast, 1.2 contrast is a lot of contrast. You could slip that using the pivot, slides where that contrast goes. And that's okay. But I find gamma, the sliding of the middle, much more interesting. The difference between gamma and contrast is gamma adjusts the middle. Contrast brings the top up, the whites up and the blacks down. So you're kind of taking that signal and stretching it this way and leaving the middle alone. Gamma gives you a range of difference in the middles. And where that might be most interesting is in modeling shapes. So where shadows play on surfaces, on faces, modeling skin tones, opening up value in the middle. This, very often what I'm doing is I'll make a first pass of my color grade with a client, and they'll come and we'll review it, and they say, it's just a little dark. I'll then lift up the gamma by a few points, and suddenly we're kind of in there. In the first round of a primary color correction, you want to get your blacks and your whites kind of clean, and and stretch. But gamma, that's where you can kind of paint in the middle. Okay, any other controls here? So lift is blacks, gamma is mids, gain is whites, highlights, offset, shifts, all of this at the same time. Your lift, your gamma, gain, your whites, blacks, and shadows all change at the same time. This is on tab number 1 here on the bottom of, we're still in the primary color correction, this area here. Now, the other controls you have here in your primary is a saturation control, and that's up here someplace. See how little I'm using this? Oh, it's over here. It's not even labeled. You don't even know it, but this is saturation. How brilliant is this? $30,000 and I don't know what this knob is. Saturation lifts all the chroma at the same time. You notice my luminance is not changing. My brights do not change. And you would know that if I had all 4 scopes up. So here's my luminance scope. So saturation is not changing. And desaturation goes that way too. The other interesting shift, you can shift the whole hue of the image using this hue control. This is useful particularly in getting subtle changes to skin tone. 1 degree one way will make a big difference when we get into qualifying skin tones. Lumamix is a very awkwardly explained thing. It has to do with involving the ratio of the luminance only, this one, with whatever you're doing with the RGB. And the end result is so minimally significant that I don't even use this. It's kind of effective when you get into maybe these multi-layer composites and things that we'll be doing on day 3, but don't worry about Lumamix. I don't think it's going to do much for you. Is there anything else on 2, the second page, that might help you? Well, okay, color temperature. You could rapidly shift the color temperature if you like to do it that way. You can do that also, shift the color temperature with the red. You can get a more precise color temperature control in the red raw data. And you could type in the value you want. So if you wanted a 4,500 Kelvin, that just cooled it off. You really cool it. And that might be helpful for looks. With the camera raw settings, it is not carried in the grade. It is stored with the raw data of that clip. I tend to leave that alone. Except I had some underwater work on the Chinese Wild A documents. I did use color temperature on that. Okay, back to the primary control button here. So you can adjust temperature here, tint here, kind of okay. I don't use these controls very much. An interesting one is called mid-tone detail. Watch what happens to her face. So that's changed a lot. And let's go big screen here. So I should be toggling. Okay, yeah. So mid-tone, I've taken away all my grade there. I've canceled that. So mid-tone detail is one way to kind of smooth out a picture. This is far more than you'll ever need. The noise reducer does much more subtle things. And there's a red file here of an African-American woman who has some pores in her skin. We're going to show you how we can use some techniques to smooth that out a little more precisely. But anyway, that, and MD is there. It's an effect, I hardly ever use that. Where I do use that is if I've got stock footage. If you've got archival work and old movies, and it has lots of quantizing or pixelization damage, the mid-tone detail helps blend those pixels out. So archival work can look a little better for having done that. You get some of the blockiness out of it. Color boost is really just another saturation control. I hardly ever use it. Shadow and detail, these are more interesting. If you've got something that got too, my control went off. You see, that's color boost. That's just, you can use that, or you can use your saturation button up here. They spend a lot of money on. Shadow allows you to really just stretch the shadow detail independently of the rest of it. This is kind of nice when you've got, if you have to match a DSLR camera with a Sony camera, the DSLR gets that really crunchy, high contrast look. That shadow, you can bend the shadow up and your DSLR camera will look more like your good camera or your C300 camera. So shadow and highlight, those are great little tools for camera matching. I like them. These other here, they're kind of silly. Now here's the dumbest one. Here's the idiot one. I'm going to reset the node here. Reset node, canceling my correction. Nothing going on here. Why don't we autocorrect? Let's hit the A button. This'll autocorrect it. That's autocorrect. I keep clicking it. Try one more time. Let's get the right button. A for autocorrect. Oh, that's so much better. It's a dumb thing. What did it do? It just automatically tries to set signal. So it sees black and it says, okay, I'll put that down there. And it sees white, oh, I'll put that up there. And it pays no attention to where the middle is. So this is why you will have your jobs as filmmakers, because no robot is going to color correct a movie. Knock on wood. Okay, undoing that, again, once again, you hit the reset. Okay, I think we're doing good here now. I think I can give you more information here that you can work with in your class.